Good morning to those on the East Coast of the United States. Good afternoon to some in the Middle East, and probably good evening to many around the world. Apologies for the delay in starting this program, but it is difficult to put Zooms together that are international. And we usually are perfect, but occasionally we are a few minutes late. So apologies to any listeners who were frustrated. I'm Jane Harman, the president and CEO of the Wilson Center, the virtual Wilson Center. And I'm excited to welcome you all to an event that honors a wonderful friend, an unmatched scholar, and a shining star in the Wilson crown. And of course, for those of you who don't know whom I'm talking about, and that of course means none of you, Haleh Esfandiari is a legendary voice on all matters Iran, Middle East, and women's leadership. We at the Wilson Center may be a bit biased, I don't think so, but may be a bit biased, since she was the director of our Middle East program from its creation to in 1998 to 2015. But I think most of you think we're right. And I also want a nod to Marissa Horma, who is on this call and will be following up with questions, who is the leader of our Middle East activities now and has done a superb job and played an instrumental role in getting our speaker today. And when you see her, you will understand why today's program honors our wonderful Haleh. The annual forum that bears Haleh's name is a joint initiative of the Middle East Program and the Global Women's Leadership Initiative. And it's similarly dedicated to promoting women's empowerment and women's rights around the world, but particularly in the MENA region. We inaugurated the Haleh Esfandiari Forum in March 2017 with an address by former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, and the following year hosted Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. Sadly, we didn't have the forum last year, but we're back. This year, we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Rola Dashti, who is Executive Secretary of the UN's Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia. The title is a mouthful, but that's because Dr. Dashti is tackling a big task that's only getting harder during the pandemic, coordinating among 18 Arab countries to help them reach their economic and social development goals, share best practices, and become stronger as an integrated region. In short, she does what women do best, bring people together to solve problems, and is an inspiration to women and girls in her native Kuwait and throughout the Middle East. In addition to her office at the UN, which she joined in January 2019, she is a member of Kuwait's Supreme Planning Council. From 2012 to 2014, she was Minister for Planning and Development, as well as Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs. She played a key role in advocating for the decree to allow Kuwaiti women to vote and run for parliamentary elections. And in May 2009, she and 3 other women became the first women to be elected to Kuwait's parliament. Of course, her most important claim to fame, I mean, all this stuff is good, but her most important claim to fame is that she's a 5-time speaker at the Wilson Center, having joined us for the first time back in 2005. Today, she'll draw on her experience at the UN and the Kuwaiti government to help us understand women's economic empowerment in the Middle East and North Africa, where the greatest challenges lie, and how the pandemic has made everything more complicated. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Dashti, who will speak next. And then we will have Q&A. I'll ask the first question and we'll go to the audience, moderated by Marissa Horma. And please join me also in celebrating the incomparable Haleh Esfandiari. Over to you, Dr. Dashti.
Thank you very much, Jane, for the invitation and the introduction. And before I start, I would also like to pay tribute and esteem appreciation for all the work Haleh Esfandiari has done to improve the status of women globally, but in our region specifically, on all fronts. whether it was in the area of increasing our participation in political fields, or addressing domestic violence and sexual harassment at work, and supporting us in proposing various laws to address these issues, or empowering us economically to be active member of society to shape the future we want. I just want to say thank you, Haleh, for her unwavering commitment. Thanks for her being relentless giver. She will always be remembered in our region as our beacon and a global citizen with boundless giving and support. Jane, you are not biased at all. To come back to our topic, let's start with decades of socioeconomic development in our region. Where are we now in terms of women economic engagement? Women across Arab countries are making great strides in terms of education attainment and access to health services. They continue to break new grounds in many areas of life. However, discriminatory laws and legal practices, discriminatory social and cultural norms, and structural barriers to gender equality remain still entrenched in our societies. Furthermore, the achievement that Arab women accomplished throughout the years have been marginally translated into social economic gains. Women in the region has the lowest labor force participation rate globally. It's about 21%. However, this rate also varies among countries within the region. It may be as little as 6% in Yemen and as 50% and above in some GCC countries like Kuwait and UAE. However, despite this low participation rate, still women has also the highest unemployment rate globally. We are about 20% unemployment rate, where the global average is 5.4% for women. And for those who are working, the majority of them are in the informal sector with no access to social protection and unemployment insurance. And for those women who are in the formal sector and working in the formal sector, they have low representation in senior positions. In fact, the Arab region lags behind the world when it comes to women representation in management. When we look at women's entrepreneurship, it's still also comparatively low in our region. Women-owned businesses tend to be small or medium-sized enterprises and face greater restrictions with respect to access to credit and resources, which hinders their growth and survival prospects, and are at higher risk when exposed to external shocks. And one of these external shocks is COVID-19. The COVID pandemic have also compounded the effects on women economically. It had impacted sectors in Arab region where women are mostly engaged in. We expect that we will lose around 2 million jobs. So we're expecting in our analysis that 2 million jobs will be lost on women. Further, as you know, the pandemic had impacted the informal sector dramatically, where also Arab women constitute 65% of the informal sector. Now we have a double whammy on women, let alone the other impacts of women in terms of their pressure as they are morely in the health sector, which are very much exposed to the COVID risks. Into it, let alone it's the more we're seeing more violence against women during the pandemic into it. But with all of these challenges that women are facing economically and in the labor market and the sector, where do we go from here? I think it's about time we need to rethink our approach regarding creating economic opportunities to women, so that to bridge the inequality gap and utilize the talents and the assets that women possess in shaping the development path for a prosperous Arab societies. A structured transformative approach built on citizenship equality and societal solidarity could be a starting point. What I'm talking about is that we need to challenge the prevalent gender discriminatory perceptions in labor markets and capitalize on women's increased level of education in all sectors to allow women's labor mobility across all economic sectors, and not only engage them in female traditional sector. We also need to expand the care economy. We need to approach care policies from a gender equality perspective, considering unpaid care as a family issue and not a women issue. This way, we will redistribute unpaid care responsibilities and boost women economic participation. We need also to have a better governance structure to reduce informality through pro-employment macroeconomic frameworks, well-designed incentive tax policies, and inclusive social protection programs. We also need the private sector to be involved and engaged. We need large businesses and corporations to strengthen societal solidarity, to support women businesses by integrating them in supply chains and favoring them in procurement and subcontracting. To end, the region will not develop and recover better from COVID-19 if women are kept marginalized. It is a shared responsibility among all stakeholders in the region to ensure women are economically and socially empowered and are not a wasted resource if we want to have a just, stable, and flourishing Arab region. And I stop here and open to discussion. And thank you, Jane, again for inviting me.
I unmuted myself. I think I did it. Thank you. I really appreciate not only that you identified the problem, but you also charted some ways forward. And let me say, I was in the Middle East region in last December. Time flies. It's been a long time that most of us have not traveled. But I was there with a delegation of women. And first I went to Amman, Jordan with Marissa and with Alex Farley, who co-authored some of our reports that we've put out. At this issue, you mentioned of workforce asymmetries, where women have as much or better education than men, but have far less success in the workplace. We then went to Doha, Qatar, and and participated in the Doha Forum with others and talked about this some more. So we called it the MENA paradox, and you've described it extremely well. My question to you is, you've listed you made a list of answers, of fixes. What chance do we have and where to get those fixes adopted? Which Arab countries will likely be amenable to them? What about your own country of Kuwait, where I know there are many, many accomplished women, but obviously the performance is not what it needs to be?
Thank you, Jane. It is a paradox, and it's more compounding challenge now, as it is the job creation that the region has, and it's a problem across the region. It's irrespective of where the region, the country income status is. Generating jobs is extremely important. In the midst of inability of the region to generate and create jobs, then women are becoming disenfranchised further and further. And this is where our concern and our worry, because now women, as you will see and you have seen in our region, tertiary education, 70% of people, of students in tertiary education are women in the region across.
Right.
So they're requiring well education. And now you need to benefit as a society from this investment in education to translate it into job creation. So now the region itself, I can't come and tell you there is a country better off than others. The challenge of the job creation is extremely important, but also important, further more important, is the issue of the social norms, because with the limited job opportunities, now the thinking in the region, and this is a cultural thinking, that the breadwinner is a male. So the thinking becomes that we need to give the priority for male vis-a-vis the female on the job opportunities.
Right.
And this is what you see among the unemployed people, around 75% in the region are women compared to when you see the distribution of the employment. So there is the unemployment. So there is always a preference to the male. So there is also, as I said, we need to challenge this thinking that women is a citizen. Okay, it's not you see it as a gender I, but you see it as a citizen that needs to be contributing to the society. And this is the big challenge that the Arab region in totality has it. Education is more making start, but I think we still have that challenge coming up into it.
Right. For example, Marissa took me, and she'll remember the name of it, and I don't, to an incubator in Amman where women only, so far as I remember this, are being trained for the jobs, some of the entrepreneurial jobs of the future. We also saw a training center in Amman, I think it was in Amman, where the education system is matched better with the labor market. So people are learning, this has to happen in the United States too. They have to learn, they have to be taught to do the jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past. And I was impressed with this. And it was, as I remember it, focused on women. So I guess what I'm asking, and Marissa will give more detail in a minute. I guess what I'm asking is, at least Jordan is stepping up. Are other countries stepping up in the way that Jordan is to try to deal with the problem that you explain well, which is cultural, but also a skills mismatch?
Yes, it's the issue of women engagement is taking a priority at the leadership levels on all governments in the region. You will see a little bit of variation, but there is that push to get women, and it's a push in the entrepreneurship, in the small and medium business, where they are pushing them. And as you rightfully said, is the issue is the future of jobs. This is the future of jobs and the decent work also that we're looking for. Jordan is doing the Strive, UAE, Kuwait, Egypt, Lebanon also are doing various strides. But the important thing is that we need to have the space and the opportunity. Creating the opportunity is the key issue that we need to have. And now it's just to let you know that women are moving very much into the ICT field itself, and they're taking a big space. And this is what we're thinking is that digitalization and the fourth industrial revolution can be also a beneficiary to women, because they might be the benefit of it, and then moving their role in society by capitalizing on the IT expertise that they are putting on. And now we at ESCO are creating also a platform, enabling platform for women entrepreneurship, where they can have access to funding, access to access to legislation, access to market, access also to training and capacity building. And the platforms usually we're trying to do them also the language issue. So we're trying to do these types of platforms not only in English, but also in Arabic, so that can be accessible to all women, and not only the people who have in the elites who can know the double English languages or stuff like that. But you are rightfully so, is that getting women into the small business sector is extremely important, and digitalization can be a very good supportive mechanism.
Well, Rola, you too are one of the pioneers, just like Haleh, and you were one of the first women to be elected to the Kuwaiti parliament. I served 9 terms in the US Congress at a time when there were far fewer women. It's really exciting to know you are where you are in very pragmatic ways, helping women as much as you are. So I want to salute Haleh again, send love, hugs, but also salute you for your service and for your partnership over many years with the Wilson Center. Now, let's have Marissa Hurma, whom we all love as well, explain in more detail what I was trying to say about the visit in Amman and why these activities are useful, but also ask you more questions and then field questions from the audience. Over to you, Marissa.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Harman, for your kind words and your questions. And thank you, Dr. Dashti, for joining us today. Both you and Dr. Dashti, as well as Haleh Esfandiari, are role models for my generation and generations to come. So we appreciate everything that you've done. And we promise to continue to carry the torch forward. And that's, beyond just working on workforce issues. And at the Wilson Center, we've focused a lot on women's issues, primarily economic empowerment, because I believe, as probably you do too, the future is feminine, particularly with so many highly educated women in my country, Jordan, as well as in your country, Dr. Dashti. Women are outperforming men in tertiary education. But as Congresswoman Harman noted, there is this paradox of given all the barriers to entry. So I want to sort of elaborate a little bit on the trip that Congressman Harman mentioned. So yes, we were in Amman, Jordan. We visited an incubator at Injaz. And then we visited Luminous College, which is a technical university that has basically embraced technology and embraced all the needed skills for the future to ensure that the youth of Jordan and of the region, because the university is open to others in the region, are prepared for the future. And as you noted, I guess COVID-19 has affected women, particularly those in the informal economy, but this is an opportunity for governments to do things differently and ensure that employing women is a priority. You also alluded to the barrier of the social and cultural mindsets. And I guess my question to you, Dr. Dashti, is how do we tackle that? Where do we start? Who are the main stakeholders that we need to involve other than the government in order to ensure that we are addressing these mindsets that constantly condition women in certain, feminine professions? How do we do this?
Thank you, Marissa. It's the key issue, communication, media. In addition to our curriculum, the educational curriculum that needs to be revisited by strengthening the role that the woman role is not only in the private sphere. Our education curriculum now portray that the main role of women is in the private sphere as a mother, as a wife, and taking care of the household, while they're portraying that the male is in the public sphere, where he is the one, he's the breadwinner and the one who's engaging in the public life. We need to revisit these roles. We're not saying we need to balance these roles. The role is a family. So the role of women needs to be revisited, that she has a role in the private sphere as well as in the public sphere. So our education curriculum needs to revisit the roles of individuals. The second thing is that we need to see it's a woman is a citizen. It's not the issue of gender. And we need to move forward and say it's a citizen that has the rights and obligations to the state. And part of the rights of the women is to participate in shaping the development of the country and shaping it. And by shaping it, it means that it's participating, and it's all in its economic activities and its social activities of it. So the more we see the woman as also as a citizen, and the same thing when you see the woman as a citizen, not as a gender from gender I, then you know that she doesn't need to have a middle person between her and the state for her engagement. So these are social barriers, and where does it come? First is our education curriculum. Second is our media. Also our media, that we have the shows that we do, or the media when they respect, we need to showcase. We need to showcase that women can play different roles in various issues. And I'll give you an example. When, for instance, when I was running for parliament the first time, and in Kuwait is a society, is a conservative society. We do have what we call the Diwaniya, is like men's clubs where people can sit in a different groups, and this is where candidates goes to them and present their programs and present themselves for the voters. So when we wanted to go, they say, how we're gonna go to these Diwaniyas? This is our men's clubs and only men goes there. And then this was a barrier for women to enter. You cannot get votes if you don't reach out to your constituents this way. And we decided to say we are candidates. We are not women. You need to see us as a candidate, not as a woman or a male entering the Diwaniya and the men's club. You need to see us as a candidates. And then we entered these Diwaniyas and as a candidate, not looking us at the person and seeing what we can offer to society into it. And this is what we need, courageous. We need people to take the forefront and move. We cannot, there is so much at stake. And this is why I think our partner in this society, breaking down these social norms that are hindrance to society development, is the media. We need to partner with the media. They play a key role in portraying what the role of women is and highlighting into and focusing on these accomplishments. We have women, as you said, in jazz, you see in jazz is, when you see in jazz, which are promoting the students, and a lot of them are women, how to become entrepreneurs. So giving them trust. And the second thing, women needs to invest in herself. Also, the investment in itself to get self-confidence that we can accomplish. That's very important, that women need to know that we can accomplish. And investment in ourselves is extremely important. Also, that way, also you can break barriers into it. And it is, the legislation plays a big role. We need to break also the social norms that are crippling us by changing laws and regulations in the labor market, in the accessibility, in making it more let's say, more just laws that can create opportunities. We need to create opportunities, and people need to know that we are not competing with men. The issue is that when you bring the issue of gender issues on anything, it was women economic empowerment, or it is rights in women in engaging in decision making, or anything pertaining to women education, people think it's a competition. We are competing with the men and who can take the other person's slots. And what we're trying to say, and we need to portray, is we are not competing, we are complementing, and together we are fulfilling the development of a nation. So the narrative needs to change. It's an issue is that our role is a complementary, it's a role of a joint role, because the eye is in the development of the society and the future of our kids and our future itself. So there is different elements that have it, aside from the government, as I said, media, ourselves, NGOs, private sector plays a big role. Private sector can play a big role in terms of enhancing women economic empowerment, especially if we are, as I just said, majority of women are in the informal sector. They produce products. You need to engage them in a value chain. You need to come and bring them to the value chain and bring them from informality to formality. And the private sector can play a big role in this enhancement. And this is what we're trying to push. And technology plays a big role also to us, because it enhances this mobility and engages various actors together and brings them together. And this is why we're doing this enabling platform as a virtual place where women can capacity building, can link with the private sector, can have access to funds, so that it's also people can see them as when you finance women, you're financing in the future also to give them the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Dashti. I think the most powerful message I heard that needs to be sort of reiterated is that we women are not competing, we're complementing. This is, I think, a very powerful statement. So we have a few questions from our viewers that I will read out. The first question is from Dinah Negroponte, who is a public policy scholar at the Woodrow Wilson Center. How has quarantine due to COVID-19 impacted women in the MENA region? In Latin America, it has resulted in a 22% rise in violence against women. Is there a similar trend in MENA? Are they willing to report in person or at police stations or by telephone or online? And what is being done to protect them?
Thank you. Yes, we do share what Latin America has shared in terms of an increase in domestic violence and violence against women due to COVID. We have documented this in one of our briefs of the impact of COVID on gender in our region, especially in the women. But also, I need to highlight there is women are calling police stations. Some countries, like in Lebanon and in Egypt and other places, they had some police stations, phone calls, hotlines that people can call and expresses that they are being abused and they needed support into it. There is also different places they opened the shelters for the women that they need to engage. But COVID also impacted women further because, as I said, it impacted the informal sector very much because of the lockdowns. And you know, majority of women who are working in the informal sector, and these sectors are hit very badly. So even it impacted the women in their economic independence, which is the income generation. And COVID have drifted a lot of women into poverty. And this is where it regressed us further and then compounded us. We had around 14 million additional people going into poverty due to COVID. And a majority of them are women. And because there's no social protection schemes for women who are in the informal sector, and there's no protection schemes for them when they lost these jobs and their businesses and small businesses. Furthermore, it's more devastating when you looked also to disabled women, the vulnerable group of disabled women that they need more protection and more support that have been forgotten. And the systems in our region, unfortunately, does not tailor to the vulnerable groups as much in time of risks and the time of crisis. So we at ESCWA always raise the flag on the issues and look into the vulnerable groups, the women, the needy ones, the disabled, and making sure that they are benefiting and they are engaging in the they've been addressed, their needs has been addressed, and they are part of the society. So it is big challenges. COVID is, as I said, compounded further the challenges that women are confronted with. We have a double whammy now into it, and it regressed a lot of also the accomplishments that women has done. We went backward with high unemployment now. More people are at risk. More women are in poverty. So it is, and more women also who are been at the forefront, because women usually are in the traditional female sectors where they are in the health sector, so they are also prone to more risk factors getting covered.
Thank you, Dr. Dashti. Another question we received from one of our viewers is from Dr. Yugoji Eze, who is the CEO and founder of A Fractured World. What roles are women playing in building back better resilient communities post-COVID? And the second part to this question, are women in national plans to building back resilient communities after climate change and water disasters?
Okay, it's very important building back better and creating resilient communities. First, we need to ensure that we do, and women are pushing and advocating into revisiting our social protection schemes, so it becomes inclusive. This is a very important, so that you make ensure that no one is left behind, so that the community get to become more solidified into it. These are very important things. The second thing is that we are linking, as I say, women is not only trying to change legislations to make sure that domestic violence, for example, or creating the opportunities and making a bigger space for them in the public sphere, also pushing the boundaries in legislation and changes, but also the engagement. And women goes and start to rebuild her life as quick as possible. And this is where we're trying to create a better environment for them. So a lot of them have lost their businesses, a lot of them have lost their incomes, and now they are trying to rebuild better in terms of getting them engaged in a more stable businesses, and engaging them, that getting them more access to finance. Women are also calling for solutions to some of the problems that they are encountering in their businesses to make it survival. Now we're talking about investment in survival and the survival of the businesses, not only their livelihood. And this is where they're trying to push private sector, push governments into giving them loan deferrals, pushing businesses and giving them rent reductions, trying to, they're engaging a lot in making their businesses more sustainable. Climate change is very important. They're rebuilding better by engaging also entering green technologies. So, and this is where we get into resilient communities. There very much now you see a lot of women are engaging in green technologies when they're building their businesses so that it becomes more resilient into it.
Thank you, Dr. Dashti. I want to actually, before turning to more questions from our viewers, I want to take advantage of the fact that I have two women trailblazers who were members of Parliament / Congress in their respective countries. And since this week, the international community is also commemorating the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Women's Conference. And I know Congresswoman Harman, you were part of the U.S. delegation. So I'm going to ask both of you to talk about, 25 years later, where do you see women in your respective countries? What are sort of the main issues that we still need to work on? And what are some of the successes that we also need to celebrate? Because that's important role modeling for other generations. Congresswoman Harman, would you like to start?
Well, I actually was thinking about that as Rola was talking. I wasn't first in Congress. There were women before me, but I was elected in 1992, which was called the Year of the Woman, because we doubled the number of women in Congress and elected 2 senators from several states, including my state of California, Dianne Feinstein, who still serves there, and Barbara Boxer, who served for many years. And we still have 2 senators. The other one is Kamala Harris. And so as far as I'm concerned, that's good. But at any rate, there were very few women. What changed and is good, and it actually is consistent with what Rola's been saying, is we achieved a critical mass of women. And things start to change when women are in leadership, and when all the activities that you do as a person in political life include having women on your team and women as your boss and the rest of it. And I am the first woman who happens to be the CEO of the Wilson Center. I've been in this position for almost 10 years, and it's different. It makes a difference. So I would say for the MENA region that a difference is there is not yet critical mass. You can, maybe I'm wrong about this, but there is not yet critical mass because of all the cultural norms and other impediments to women, regardless of their excellent educational status, having the same job, same pay, same opportunities as men. And that is different in the US. And just last election in 2018, we achieved, I don't know the exact number, but 120 or so women currently sitting in the United States Congress. It's about a 25%, maybe a little lower. And the same is true for the Senate. And that's what I mean by critical mass. And I was proud. Let me just say one more thing. I know Hillary Clinton. She was then the first lady. I was on a delegation of 4 people, 4 members, 3 women and a man, by the way. And she came into the room and she said, women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. And it was an electric moment. And that still is the iconic phrase. I think that will never be forgotten.
Thank you, Congressman Harman. Dr. Dashti?
Thank you, Melissa. I'll just, to follow on what Jane was talking about. Yes, the phrase that Hillary Clinton stated, I was part of an NGO delegation at that time at Beijing, and the phrase that women's rights is a human rights and human rights are women's rights was still the slogan that we push to advance women's role in our societies also. But where did we come? Yes, we came a long way, not as much as we would like to have been but it is. Now you will see more women in political positions as parliamentarians or ministers in the decision making. We do have several countries have passed laws that have quotas for women participation in political life, which is a big accomplishment, so that we can see various women ensure that there is women in the political participation into it. In entrepreneurship, in the business community, we see much more women in the business community as entrepreneurs than what we were 25 years ago. It's increasing. The pace is slow. And we're looking forward to increase the pace and the momentum to create the critical mass that Jane was talking about. The other thing is, and I think digitalization and communication that also is facilitating the progress of women. And I'll give examples. Now we are in the Arab region that we have a network of parliamentarians, women parliamentarians who were ex-parliamentarians or current parliamentarians. And that network is put for the whole region, and we push agenda to increase the women in the decision making, and we start pushing our young girls to engage in the public life. Also cross experiences. It's extremely important to push issues and agendas for our development. Issues on working on domestic violence, law against domestic violence, and we're trying to have an Arab treaty on this and Arab declaration on that, and pushing the League of Arab States, and we're pushing as a mass, that not to become fragmented, but we become as a group, as women who were privileged to be representing their countries, their citizens in parliament, or being government members, ministers, that we're pushing the floor and gaining from our experiences and keep on showcasing, so that we don't want to become as the minimum and the countless. Only you count on we have this person and that person. We want the system to enlarge and populate and perpetuate more women into various things. We don't want to pinpoint on handful, we want to pinpoint on plenty. So when you say, okay, how many do you have in parliament? We don't want to say we have one or two, but we want to have a bigger numbers, a large numbers. The same thing in businesses, where we want to see board members that we will see. Now we don't have so much women in board members in various business fields, although some of them own a lot as a shareholder or on these assets, but we need to encourage their participation. We did move. As an activist, I would have loved to see much more progress, faster progress, but I think we are accelerating, and now we are with Agenda 2030 and the SDG Sustainable Development Goals. I think it's pushing our societies to move forward and accelerate in terms of gender equality and in terms of women participation. And we hope that by 2030 we would accomplish much more further with the push of the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you, Dr. Dashti. So I have a message and a question from Dr. Haleh Esfandiari. Rola, thank you for your warm words, and thank you for being here. You were in Parliament, you were also a minister in the government, and currently you are running ESQA. How do you compare the challenges of these positions, and which gave you sleepless nights?
I think every experience has its own specificity. Being a representative of the people and representing the voice of people by legislating your eye is much more in making sure that there is a legal framework that is equitable, it's fair, it's addressing women rights better. So it's a different experience, and being also as I was among the first 4 women to enter Parliament. this is being as a parliamentarian in the parliament, dealing with the men parliament as it used to be, was a big experience to deal with the men, to make sure that they see you as a colleague, a parliamentarian colleague, not as a woman in parliament. So this we had to push a lot, so to gain our space as an equal partner, parliamentarian that is representing the people. And this is the dynamics, because you will see in parliament different representatives from extreme radicalist religious factions to the extreme liberal side. And then everybody has to communicate together, and you need to know how to deal and approach and discuss with the other end, where they see the role of women, and not in parliament or public space, but the role of women in the house, in the private sector. So whenever we started bringing into laws and making sure that women have equal opportunities in these types of laws and addressing them, there's the tension comes and the polarization comes, and pushing it and making the narrative for society, and it's not women against men. We are not talking about women against men. In government, it's a totally different. In the government, you need to implement these laws, and you need to ensure that there is equality. You need to ensure there is equality in recruitments, equality in giving opportunities for women to go into hierarchy in the upper echelon in the system. And I'm very happy to say, and I'm very proud, maybe I'll tell you, I was in cabinet when we had, and I had pushed to get women into the judiciary system. You know, recently we started having the first judges in Kuwait 2 weeks ago, but women were not allowed to be as a judges in Kuwait, and it was a long struggle for it to have women as a judge. And I remember when we were parliamentarians, the first thing we said, we need to ensure that women are participating in the judiciary system, so that we close the circle of the democratic circle, where the executive branch, the woman is there already, the legislative branch, women are already represented. We need to do the judiciary branch that have women. And when we looked into laws, we found that there is nothing we as a parliamentarian can do, because there is nothing in the laws that forbid women to become a judge. The problem is the implementation at the government level. So when we went at one time to the head of state, and he was asking us about our experience in parliament, and he said, what are you looking for? So we said, 4 of us said, we're looking for is that the government to be pushed and open the space for women to be in the judiciary system. And the response was, when you choose the toughest things to ask for. And he said, this is right. And we think this is democratic. And if we want to say Kuwait is a democratic system, then the whole branches has to become friendly, and there is opportunities for women to engage. And we couldn't do much at parliament. But when I was in the cabinet as a minister, this whole issue kept in my mind. And I started pushing the justice minister, and why wouldn't you open it? There's nothing law forbids, and let's give opportunities. And when you do your announcement to select prosecutors who will become later on judges, why do you have to make it only just for men? Make the announcement gender neutral. So don't make it specifically this job is for men. And it became a big debate back and forth. And I was able to convince him. Our prime minister was very pro-woman supporter. So we were instructive is that to allow women to apply to become a judge and the prosecutor for their path. And then government changes. I was asked to join another government where the justice minister was a person from the radicalist Islamist thinking. And when we wanted to say, okay, women applied, they were screened, selected by the Supreme Council. Now you need to sign on their appointments. And he was hesitant to sign on the appointments for them. And he said, I will not be able to select. And there became another debate, me and him, on you cannot be unfair and just for Kuwait, not only for the women. And we went back and forth. Then he came to a consensus. He said, it's my belief, it's my religious belief, I cannot do it, and I cannot send it. To him, it's a sin if he does it. So we came to a consensus with him, is that when you are outside the country on a mission, the appointed minister at that time will sign that letter. And this is what happens, is that the appointed minister was an acting minister at that time, in the absence of the justice minister, signed the letter. And this is now today, after 5 years, we saw a woman now in the judiciary system. So it's a lot. That what I'm trying to say. Every role gives you a different experience and a different thinking to do and accomplish. And now, being at the UN, I don't look only at Kuwait, but I look at the whole region. And women empowerment is extremely important, and we need to utilize. And we do have the SDG goal number 5. Gender equality is at the top of our priority. So we are moving now the whole Arab governments to make sure that we have a region, women have opportunities. And the only thing I say, create opportunities for them. And I think creating opportunities is as much as important as empowering women. It's not enough to empower women if there is no opportunities for them. So we need to create the opportunities so the empowerment we can benefit from the empowerment of women. So we have to work on the two sides at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Rola, Dr. Dashti. So those were fascinating stories, and I think testimony to the importance of having women in different leadership roles, whether in the executive or in the legislature, because that gives you an opportunity to push for improving women's rights and implementing laws as well, not just reforming laws. And so I want to take this discussion to focus on women's leadership in the MENA region. The Wilson Center this past March published a report focused on women's leadership in the public sector in the Middle East and North Africa region. And many countries in the GCC, including Kuwait, are sort of on top of that list. One of our findings, which we thought was very interesting, and maybe you can sort of link it back to the importance of an emergent entrepreneurial generation of women, is that there is a correlation between asset ownership and equal inheritance laws and women's leadership in the public sector. So if we see that women are more financially independent, that they own property, assets, etc., we're more likely to see them to see them as more economically and financially independent, and therefore more likely to see them in leadership positions. And I know one of the barriers to entry to many youth, both men and women, but particularly women in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, is access to finance. So how do you tackle this? Because inheritance laws in the region are based on Islamic law, but that does not prevent women from owning property or assets. So how do we move the needle on this particular aspect of it and ensure that women have more opportunities and access to capital?
Thank you, Marisa. Okay, here we go. The first thing we see an improvement in is that, as you rightfully saw, there is inheritance. Women, yes, we are bounded by the Islamic Sharia when it comes to inheritance, but women has the right to own properties, have the right to. But when they inherit, usually who manage the inheritance, it used to be their brothers. So it used to be the male counterpart that manages the inheritance. And it used to be before women, it's a shame to say, I want to take my inheritance and manage it, and manage the wealth of my inheritance. But now we're seeing much more women are moving forward, either asking for their inheritance or managing their inheritance, not giving it to their brothers to manage it, and they are sidelined. So we are seeing more women are engaging in that and in the economic sphere. Still, financing is extremely important for entrepreneurship. And there is a lot of Arab countries now have a lot of funding programs, government funding programs to support entrepreneurship, whether it was female or male, but young entrepreneurs itself, whether it was in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the various countries in the region, to create the funding. And this is what we are doing at ESCWA also, creating this virtual platform, enabling platform for the women entrepreneurs and the SMEs in general, to show them where are the funds and how you can tap into the funds. Sometimes the resources are there, but you don't know about them. So knowing about where to tap the funds and how to tap the funds is as important as the funds availability. And that's what we're trying to also do, is bringing the funds, that available funds within, for the beneficiary, the women entrepreneurs, to access that funds itself. And the same thing, you need to build capacity capabilities. But I need to make one point, is that asset ownership and wealth and being in public sphere sector and leader positions are not practically linked. Usually, let's say, wealthy females or well-endowed, economically endowed females who are usually are working in the private sector. So you'll see them more in the entrepreneurship business and the leadership from the private sector. In the public sector, it's as you know, it's a system, it's a bureaucratic system that you go up the ladder of it. And this is where we need to push women. And this is the trick, is that appointing people to decision-making positions in public sector does not rest, and that's what I keep telling our women colleagues, does not rest only on your ability and technical ability per se. You can't say, I'm a very good architect or engineer, so I'm a Minister of Public Work, so I could be, or I'm a very good doctor, so why should it be I am the assistant undersecretary, stuff like that. It's not only, especially for women, it does not only rest on being a technically solid and professionally expertise. You need to have the network. And unfortunately, women does not build networks. They think, I'm so good, and I do my best, and I'm recognized in my field, so decision makers should tap on me. It doesn't work like this. And women needs to understand in the public sector, there's a different dynamic. And the dynamism is that you need to build the network. And this is what we differ, women in general and men, when they go to the job. When you start your career as a woman, you start to say, okay, I start in a position, I want to do my job at best, and I want to excel in my job. And that's how our thinking goes. The man, when he gets to the job, he says, how can I be the manager after 5 years? So his work profile, you see him might not be working, he will be doing 40% work, 60% networking. While women will be doing 85% work and maybe 15% networking, because we don't go into the same ambition at the beginning. So this is where we say women need to make sure that, yes, we do our job very good, but we need also to our ambition to be in the decision-making process, and being elected in the decision-making process, we need to have the second element of it, is the networking. And this is where we need to build capabilities and encouragement. It's not enough to say, I'm so good, I should be selected. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for women. Women work to do harder and reach out further. And second, and most importantly, and I keep telling our female colleagues and women, you shouldn't be shy to say, I'm interested in the post. Women are shy to say, I'm interested to become an assistant secretary, undersecretary. They're shy to say, I want to be the Secretary General of this institution. They just get to be shy. They say, no. I think saying that you are interested in a post when it's open is extremely important. So people can recognize that you have an interest. You might not get this post, but you start becoming part of the names that can be circulated, that, oh, we have this person as interesting. So we need to invest in ourselves. That's why I say women need to invest in themselves, not only to be technically solid, but we need to invest into the other elements so that our movement to the higher position in the public sphere and the public sector becomes faster.
Thank you, Dr. Dashti. This is very good advice for all women and men listening and viewing this discussion, because as you know, we always talk about glass ceilings, but it seems that these glass ceilings are sometimes in women's minds. As you noted, often women don't think about, the next position. They're very focused on the work and the technical part. I want to go back to a question from Brooke Sherman from McGill University and the Wilson Center, which is sort of linking back to one of the comments you made earlier about COVID being an opportunity to bring in women back into the workforce and particularly formalize those who were in the informal sector. And you alluded to the important role of the private sector and employers, but what specifically can the private sector or employers in general do to ensure that women are not shut out, but rather brought in more proactively, particularly post-COVID?
Thank you. If I'm talking about a private sector relationship, because if I'm seeing women relation in the businesses as a private sector, but they are small ones, and that's what I kept saying. They need to have big businesses, large businesses needs to have their eye is that these women who are entrepreneurship, who are in small, medium-sized enterprises, they need to be linked to the value chain. So private sector can enhance a lot of women economic empowerment by becoming what I call is the off-taker of their services. So if I'm producing products, my off-take, because marketing and selling is an issue to the business, and its key issue is that to sell your product. So if there is an off-taker where the large business becomes the off-taker of these services, whether it was goods or services, that will be enhancing the women and stability and improving their progress. So I think it's always important that giving opportunity, let's go back to giving opportunity. Large businesses can give opportunity to small women businesses by engaging them in their value chain. Second thing, also they can engage them also in their procurement. And so it's very important, large businesses also in their procurement, give an opportunity for this woman to start to be part of the procurement, and they have chances on their procurement. The second thing, and I think, is that women entrepreneurship, and that's what we're trying to create. We need to create for them a community to bring them as a co-op, a community of their products. And now we have, for example, in some places like in Morocco, there is a women business, and what does she do? It's a women business. She goes to women smaller informal sector businesses and bring their products together. So one will be producing, for example, let's assume 10 chairs, another one will be producing 15 chairs and 16 or whatever it is. She accumulates them on a platform, on a virtual platform to sell their products. So you bring in all these women with lots, and you create a more production, a space for producing and becoming a big block, so that businesses, even big businesses, can now engage with them. So also we need to bring this together. COVID also enhances, why I say COVID is also an opportunity to build back better, is that now countries are looking into how, if we can't informalize the formality, people in the informal sector to formalize them, but now we try to create laws and regulations to protect them in the informal sector. Egypt, for example, at COVID, had now more than, my understanding, when I was speaking to the Minister of Planning, more than, I think, 2 million of informal sector have been registered, which they used not to know about. And they're now supporting them. Because of the COVID impact, they're supporting them. But now we have a registry that these people are there, and this is, and now how we sustain these businesses, and then taking them step forward to become formalized into it by doing different laws and and policies in that perspective. For example, now also, actually, I'm with you in a meeting, and I have my team are talking to also business entrepreneurs, women business entrepreneurs, big businesses that they are managing, and we were trying to work out how to support these big businesses to fund and support small women entrepreneurs and link them together. So we're trying to link the big with the small. So to bridge the inequality gap and create more opportunities. And so there is a solidarity, and that's one of the things I was talking in my speech now, is the issue of the solidarity. We need to look into societal solidarity. Not everything rests on governments. Governments cannot do everything. And not everything needs to rest on government, but it needs to have a societal solidarity, because it's from the premise, it's our shared responsibility. Shared responsibility to all of us. If we want to have a stable and prosperous society, we need to create a shared responsibility with societal solidarity in the mix. And this is where we are bringing the private sector, P2P, private to private, and getting the small businesses, the women entrepreneurs, and linking them with the big businesses run and owned women entrepreneurs who have inherited these businesses from their family, and we're bringing these types of family businesses with the small ones together. And it takes time, but it is important to move and to showcase. And as I said, the more we have success stories, the more the implementation goes faster. So it is the challenge at the beginning, but I think, and this is where we say we need to become creative in how to address the issue and how to bring different partners into the table, because there is a lot that can be done into it. And COVID showed us solidarity is key. And this is an aspect of COVID is solidarity. And when we want to say we want to invest, and I always say to mitigate the impact of COVID, you need to invest in survival. And not only survival in our livelihoods and being safe and healthy, but also survival into our businesses. And investment in survival of our businesses requires different actors to come and do survival. And this is where the women creates their opportunities. It's a revisiting, and we're trying to tell the private sector and the big cooperations, you need to revisit your role. It's not only shareholder interest, it's not only profit maximization, but you need to have a role of societal solidarity into it, your shared responsibility and society. So this is where we're trying to bring into additional role to the big cooperations to link with the small businesses, because the growth is bigger. When the economy grows, everybody will benefit further. So you don't want to shrink your economy, you need to expand your economy, and the solidarity will for sure expand the economy, economically and socially.
Thank you, Dr. Dashti. These are all excellent points, particularly, I guess, wrapping up this discussion on the theme of solidarity. If you're absolutely right, this was one of the major silver linings of our experiences throughout the pandemic. It's how we've seen so many different communities come together to help each other. Families who spoke once a week are now speaking every day. Colleagues who would barely see each other once a month are now engaging and collaborating more. So solidarity is definitely the theme moving forward. So a few last words from you before we thank you. What should we be looking out for the work that you're doing at ESQA? Because we would love to continue this discussion and further our collaboration with ESQA and be part of the solution to many of the challenges that you outlined today.
Thank you, Marissa. I think there is a lot of collaboration that we can do, and with the experience and expertise you have, as I said, we need to become innovative in our thinking and our approach to this transformative change that to engage women. I think we can do a lot in the virtual enabling platforms that we are doing to encourage women in various things. We need to link, as I said, the private sector. I'm not looking into the private sector also of our region, but the conglomerate multinational cooperation that also working in our region, that you can help us also into integrating these different segments, getting the SMEs to the business. Also in terms of policies, I mean, also you deal also not only to the Arab region, but you have experience and exposure to different policies and engagement and experiences in different countries that you do analyze, and things that sharing these experiences also would broaden our thinking, because this is extremely important. We don't want to test things that have been tested or are not functioning. So sharing the experiences that at the center, Woodrow Wilson Center has with us in terms of the economic empowerment of women is extremely important. Issue of women in general is also extremely important, because anything advancing women in any element, it was socially, rights or society or economically, it all feeds together in the same position that it advances the development of the country. We do share similar principles, and I think there will be a lot to get engaged. And I'll have, after we follow up, thanks for having me in that talk, and we'll have our people also meeting our Women's Center. We will be reaching out to you on that things, because we do have a lot of work we're doing on care economy itself. For example, on some of the policies that I have mentioned, that we can be supported and we can collaborate on them to move forward and advance the women economic empowerment and creating opportunities to our region.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dashti. Thank you for joining us and for a truly rich discussion today. You gave us a lot of practical advice, as well as practical solutions, and your personal experiences are also not just fascinating, but I think important for many men and women across the region to hear, because that's one way to slowly change the narrative about empowering women across the MENA region. And thank you for all the work that you've done and that you continue to do. You definitely have collaborators in us here at the Wilson Center. Of course, Dr. Haleh Esfandiari sends her best regards and her gratitude to you. We thank her for all the work that she's been doing to promote women's rights and empower generations across the region to continue the work that she's built all across the years. And thank you to Congresswoman Harman for joining us this morning. Congresswoman Harman, do you want to say a few words in closing?
Well, I also want to salute you, Marissa. You're a pioneer too. You're a little younger than we are, and you have that adorable Mila to carry the torch after you. She's the age of my grandchildren, but it is, I think, exciting to see what the Wilson Center has been able to build in terms of a women's platform and a Middle East platform in the last decade. And it's very exciting to connect with women pioneers like Rola and to see what she can do. I mean, there is, as you point out, miles to go before we sleep. That's a quote from a poem by Robert Frost, a great American poet. And there are miles to go before we sleep, but it's up to us, the women, to be pretty strong and brave and make the hard choices that you have to make to multitask. That's my version. Have families, have spouses, and have careers and ambitions. Many women are doing this, and it is changing the world. So as we struggle with this pandemic and the bad news that's all around us, including bad employment news and violence, gender violence, and so forth, we also should celebrate the good news, which is very strong women like Haleh out there still, who are still climbing mountains. It's really cool to watch. Thank you very much.
Melissa, can I say a last
yes,
1 second?
Please do.
Thank you. I just want to thank you and thank Jane and Woodrow Wilson Center for inviting me and for I want you, I just want to get the word in English. I can. For embracing my cause and our cause, the women, as we were fighting. I mean, Wilda Wilson was also with Haleh's support and work. I mean, she was part of our getting our women political rights. She contributed to it by advancing and pushing us and enlightening us on various issues, how to narrate, to fight for our cause further, and giving her our advices. And I want to say thank you to Haleh. It's been a long time I didn't see her, but she's always in our minds and our hearts, and and I'm sincerely saying her contribution to what we have been accomplishing. She puts a lot of land points in our thinking and our work. And for you, Melissa, and every single girl who is her and women who's hearing us, and I will tell all the young women that your dream is your horizon. Dream big, so you reach your horizon. And
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you for those inspiring last words, and thank you again for joining us. Thanks to all of you who are listening, and we look forward to more events in the near future. So keep your eyes on social media and the Wilson Center website. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.